My name is Evelyn. I work the closing shift at a small diner on the outskirts of town. It's the kind of place that's been around forever, where the regulars all know each other and the radio plays the same oldies on repeat. Most of our customers are locals, truckers passing through, and the occasional lost traveler looking for a bite to eat. I don't mind the job. It's predictable and the tips are decent. But the downside? Weeknights, I'm the only one working. No cooks, no other servers, just me running the place until we close at 2 a.m. It was a Tuesday, sometime after midnight, when he walked in. The man was clean-cut, dressed in a dark suit with a long coat draped over his shoulders. Not the kind of look you'd expect around here. Something about him just felt off. He took a seat at the counter, his posture rigid, his eyes scanning the place like he was taking mental notes. When I walked over, he smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Coffee, please," he said in a deep, even tone. I poured his cup and watched as he took a slow sip before setting it down, hands folded neatly in front of him. Then he asked, "Do you like working here?" It was a normal enough question, so I answered honestly. "Yeah, it's not bad." He nodded but seemed oddly disappointed by my answer. Then he leaned in slightly and asked, "Ever think about doing something bigger?" I gave a polite smile, unsure where this was going. "I'm happy for now." He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary before draining his cup and pulling out a crisp $100 bill. He placed it on the counter, smooth and deliberate, then stood up. "Have a good night, Evelyn," he said before walking out the door. I never told him my name. I tried to shake the encounter off, chalking it up to an eccentric customer. But a week later, he returned. And this time, he wasn't alone. A woman accompanied him, looking a little too put together for a place like this. She was in her mid-30s, dressed like she was trying too hard to blend in with a younger crowd. Her smile was too wide, too practiced. The moment they sat down, she looked right at me and said, "You're so pretty." Her fingers brushed against my arm as she said it, lingering just a little too long. I forced a laugh and thanked her, but my gut told me something was off. The man barely spoke this time, just sipping his coffee while she did all the talking. She asked me a string of questions: how old I was, how long I'd been working here, if I lived alone. It wasn't small talk. She was studying me. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. "I run an exclusive event club," she said. "We're always looking for people like you. You'd make a killing, 10 grand for a weekend." I let out a short laugh and shook my head. "Sounds too good to be true." "It's real," she insisted, her eyes locked onto mine. "You should step outside for a second. There's someone who can explain it better." My pulse kicked up. "I'm good," I said firmly, not bothering to hide my discomfort. Just then, a group of rowdy customers walked in, their voices filling the space. The woman's expression flickered, just for a moment before she turned back to the man. Without another word, they both stood up and left. I told my boss about it the next day, and we agreed to keep an eye out. There wasn't much else to do. They hadn't done anything illegal. But 2 nights later, as I locked up, I saw it. A car, parked across the street, engine off, headlights dark. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but as I walked to my car, I could feel it, the weight of someone watching me. My keys were clenched tightly in my hand as I got in and started the engine. I pulled out of the lot, and my stomach dropped. The car followed. It stayed back, just far enough not to raise suspicion, but every turn I made, it was still there. I turned onto a random side street. It followed. Another turn, still there. I made a split-second decision and pulled into the parking lot of a police station. The second I did, the car sped off. Nothing happened for a while after that. But then, one slow night, the woman came back, alone. I sent my boss a quick text under the counter. When I looked back up, she was watching me, her smile as unnatural as ever. "Thought I'd come check on you," she said. My stomach twisted. "We're about to close." She pouted. "Just one drink?" I debated telling her to leave, but decided to stall for time. I turned to pour her a drink, trying to keep calm. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable click of the front door shutting. I whipped around. The woman was gone. Then, from the back door, came the sound of metal rattling. Someone was trying to get in. Heart pounding, I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal shaker, while dialing 911 with my other hand. My brain raced, thinking of a way out. But before I could act, headlights appeared in the lot. It was my boss. The rattling stopped. A few seconds later, a van peeled out of the lot with a screech. When the cops arrived, my boss reviewed the security footage with them. What they found chilled me to the bone. 2 masked figures had been crouching near the front entrance, waiting. Another was at the back door, trying to force it open. The license plate on the van? Unregistered. It's been months since that night, and no arrests have been made. But my boss never makes me work alone anymore. Still, I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, watching. And I often wonder, what would have happened if I had stepped outside that night? I used to work the night shift at a small, quiet gas station on the outskirts of town, nestled between a highway and a long stretch of woods. It wasn't a busy spot. Most of my shift was spent restocking shelves, cleaning up, and occasionally ringing up a trucker or traveler passing through. It was a routine job until the night that changed everything. It was just after 2:30 in the morning, and the station was completely empty. Even the usual late-night truckers had all but disappeared. The air outside was thick with fog, making the neon lights glow hazy against the darkness. Bored, I stepped outside for some fresh air, rubbing my arms against the cold. That's when I saw him. A figure stood near one of the pumps, just on the edge of the dim lighting. He was wearing a dark hoodie, hood pulled up, hands shoved deep in his pockets. There was no car, no movement, just him standing there, watching. My stomach twisted. I had just stepped outside. There was no way I could have missed him before. I quickly ducked back inside, locking the door behind me. Through the glass, I watched him, hoping he would just walk away. But after a few moments, he started toward the door, slow at first, then with sudden purpose, as if he had made up his mind all at once. He stepped inside and made a beeline for the counter. At first, he didn't say anything, just stared at me. Then, in a rushed, almost rehearsed way, he muttered that his car had broken down just beyond the pumps. He needed a jump, maybe just a little gas to get to the next town. Something felt off. His voice was flat, devoid of the urgency someone in that situation should have. Still, I played along, offering to call a tow truck. "No," he said too quickly. His fingers twitched in his pocket. "I just need a flashlight, maybe some help checking under the hood." I glanced past him toward the parking lot. There was no car, but then he pointed at the security monitor behind me. I turned and saw a vehicle parked just beyond the station, right near the entrance to the woods. My breath caught in my throat. That car hadn't been there before. I had just been outside. Then I noticed something else. A slight movement near the back bumper. Someone was crouching just out of view. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I forced a casual smile. "Sure," I said. "Just let me grab my phone from the back office." I turned slowly, keeping my posture relaxed, but the second I was out of his direct sight, I slammed my hand onto the emergency panic button under the counter. The store alarm blared through the station, a piercing screech that filled every corner. I expected him to panic, to run, but instead his whole body language shifted. The nervous energy disappeared. He relaxed, like he had all the time in the world. And then, he smiled. Not a panicked smile, not an embarrassed one either. A slow, knowing grin. And then he turned and bolted. I ran to the monitor just in time to see him and another figure sprinting, not toward the car, but into the woods. By the time the police arrived, the car was still there. But the men were gone. No footprints leading away, no sign of them anywhere. One of the officers pointed out something I hadn't noticed before. The front passenger door was slightly ajar. There had been a third person inside the whole time. The police took my statement, reviewed the footage, and had the car towed. A few days later, they followed up with me. The car had been reported stolen nearly a week earlier, over 100 miles away. No one had come forward to claim it. No missing persons, no linked crimes, just an abandoned vehicle, parked in the middle of nowhere, with no explanation. It's been months since that night. I still think about that moment. About what might have happened if I had stepped outside with him. If I had followed him into the dark. One thing's for sure, I will never work another night shift again. I work the night shift at a large chain retail store. It's not the most exciting job, but it's steady, and the quiet hours give me time to breathe. Most nights, I stock shelves in the electronics section, one of the slower areas at that time of night. The customers are usually night owls, wandering aimlessly, or truckers grabbing last-minute supplies before heading back on the road. That's why I noticed him almost immediately. At first, I assumed he was just another customer killing time. But after a while, it became clear that he wasn't shopping. He wasn't even pretending to. Every time I glanced up, he was there, hovering just out of reach, lingering in the next aisle over, or standing too still near the clearance section. He never picked anything up, never looked at a product. He was just watching me. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was just lost. But the way he moved, always close enough to be noticed but never engaging, made my skin crawl. I reached for my radio to call a manager, only to realize the battery was dead. Great. I was debating whether to go find someone when I felt a firm hand wrap around my arm. My heart nearly stopped, but before I could react, a woman's voice rang out. "There you are. I've been looking all over for you." I turned, completely thrown off. A woman I had never seen before was standing there, smiling brightly like we were long-lost friends. Before I could say anything, she leaned in, her grip on my arm tightening slightly. "That guy's been recording you," she whispered, her tone urgent. "Follow me. Now." My stomach dropped. I risked a glance back at the man. He wasn't even pretending anymore. He was staring straight at me. Without thinking, I let the woman pull me along. She was talking loudly, acting like we were in the middle of an animated conversation, but my mind was spinning. Had he really been recording me? Why? We weaved through the aisles, moving fast. The woman kept up her act, rambling about some trip she'd taken, laughing at inside jokes we didn't share. I barely processed her words. My thoughts were stuck on him. I wanted to look back to see if he was still following, but I couldn't bring myself to. Eventually, she slowed down. I hesitated, feeling relief wash over me, but something was off. We had passed the registers, the self-checkout, even the aisles that saw the most foot traffic. The warehouse section loomed ahead, dimly lit, nearly empty. Beyond that was the side exit, the one without cameras, the one employees used for loading shipments. And that's when it clicked. She wasn't helping me, she was leading me outside. My entire body tensed. I tried to act casual, but I twisted my arm slightly, loosening her grip. "Hey, I think we're good now," I said. "We should go find my manager." She didn't let go. Her smile didn't falter, but something in her expression shifted. "Come on," she coaxed, tugging me forward. "Just a little further." Panic flared in my chest. The store was nearly dead, and she had led me to the one spot where no one would see us. I yanked my arm free and screamed. The moment my voice rang out, she lost her grip. I turned and sprinted toward the front of the store. Behind me, she yelled, my name slipping from her lips like a command. My name. I hadn't told her my name. Terror surged through me, but I kept running. I didn't stop until I nearly collided with one of my coworkers. He must have heard my scream because his eyes were wide as he fumbled for his radio, calling security. By the time I told my story, the woman and the man were long gone. Security combed through the footage, and just as I suspected, they had come in together. The man's face was caught in one of the frames, clear as day. But the woman? Her face was always turned away. Every second of it had been planned. The police got involved. They ruled it a failed abduction attempt. The man's face was entered into the system, and they were confident they could track him down. But the woman? She had been careful. I had no idea how she knew my name. I had never seen her before in my life. That's what terrifies me the most. They hadn't picked me at random. I was a target.